Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. As always, I'm your host, Josh Amick, with the same four guys on the panel as always. We got Fritz, John, Mark, and Ian. A little disappointing for us here at the Big Sky Now podcast because Montana State fell just short to North Dakota State, with North Dakota picking up the win 35-32. With the game going, the first half not being so competitive, but the second half being back and forth, a really good game. How big was the momentum in the game changed towards the end of that first half when the Bobcats seemed like they were pretty close in it, but then ended up going into the half in the final seconds being down 21-3, Fritz?
Yeah, I think that was one of two really big moments in the game. They're near midfield. They have a 4th and 5. They go for it. Really didn't have a correct play call, I thought. NDSU had it sniffed out really early, and Tommy Malott threw incomplete, and then they left a minute left, which is a lot of time, especially to cover 50 yards, which is what the Bison did. They got her done with 12 seconds left and a half through a touchdown pass, and it's an 18-point lead. Even knowing the Bobcats had come back from a 17-point deficit and they were in their opener to beat New Mexico, I thought that was just a huge deal. And if they punted and pinned them deep, there's no guarantee they would have gone to the halftime up 14-3. But I think NDSU maybe isn't quite as excited or filling their O's like they did when they took over at midfield with a minute left.
Fair enough.
Yeah, just kind of capped a first half that basically that's kind of what cost them the game. I mean, they start off, North Dakota State takes the kickoff, scores a touchdown. Montana State punts, then another touchdown. It's 14-0, gets 14-3, and then they go for it, which that's fine. They went for it. Like Fritz said, I wasn't thrilled with the play call, and then it was 21-3. So seemed like the whole half they're playing from behind. Not that they can't play from behind. Like Fritz said, they came back on New Mexico, but it always seemed like they were just kind of a step behind the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the score alone, it kind of decided the game, right? I mean, NDSU goes down, scores the touchdown for 7 points there, and then they end up losing by 3. I don't hate the decision to go for it in theory, especially looking at the play before where Malott had that great effort to, it looks like he's going to go down, kind of wraps himself around to get up and get a couple yards, get it to a little more manageable. Personally, I still think you punt it, pin them deep with less than a minute left in that first half. But I mean, it's one of those decisions where you're kind of praised for it if it works. And then if it doesn't, like it didn't on Monday night, we're here talking about it. So.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say that, Ian, that if they converted it and go down and score, you're looking back at it as maybe the reason why they win the national championship instead of the reason they lost the national championship. So it all comes down to a coach's viewpoint on a 4th and 5 in no man's land, really. So, I don't think anyone would have criticized him if he punted it, tried to maintain a 14-3 deficit or instead of trying to go for, cutting it down. But again, everyone just kind of mentioned it as well. The play call was not ideal.
Yeah, that comes up later in this show too, because there was another questionable call, but unlike the other 4th down call, the next one that Vegan chose, it worked out in their favor. So it's a game of inches, folks. A lot can change that close to the game. But I do want to shift the subject to Cam Miller, who was outstanding, over 100 yards rushing just in the first half. Second most yards allowed rushing all season by the Bobcats. And I do want to give a shout out to one of our viewers, Michael Pangelian, who said that this game is going to come down to discipline. On Cam Miller's 64-yard run, you can argue that there was no discipline by the defense because it looked like a blown assignment. He busted right open through the middle and had no one near him. So do you think that this was more about the Bison's offense just clicking that much, or was it more about the Bobcats defense not having the right scheme or just not being in the right place most of the night, Mark?
Well, a little of both. I mean, the Bison's offense was good, especially on this night. I thought Miller and Lance were a bit, outplayed Malott and Dowler or Malott and whoever your receiver you want to throw in there. So the Bison's offense was good. I mean, that play was almost like hilarious. I mean, it was just weird looking how it opened up down the middle for North Dakota State, and your boy Brock Osweiler, he explained that on TV. He showed the one safety before the snap. He runs to his right to double team one of the slot receivers on the left, and the other safety runs to his left to maybe do the same thing or provide help over the top. And then the D tackles were lined up kind of wide too. So there was like nobody in the middle. And so it was just really, really a bizarre play and a good check by Miller to take that to the house. But I'm sure they didn't mean, Montana State didn't mean to pre-snap, have both their safeties go in opposite directions and leave the middle of the field wide open.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, on that play, I had to go run upstairs and grab something while I was watching the game, and I was like, okay, they're on their own 40. Surely nothing's going to happen on this play where I'm going to miss something, right? But just kind of looking at the rest of the NDSU touchdown drives throughout the rest of the game, obviously that one was bad. I mean, they had no one in the middle of the field to stop a running play from Miller like that. But it wasn't like they were just kind of breaking off, long touchdown, like 2, 3, 4 play touchdown drives throughout the whole game. Obviously, they had the 12-play drive to start the game. They had a 10-play touchdown drive. They had an 8-play touchdown drive and a 9-play touchdown drive. I think it was more just NDSU executed a little better than Montana State did on those series than a lack of discipline, I guess I'd put it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that too I wanted to note is that NDSU's offense, as well as they played, wasn't fully disciplined throughout the night. I mean, they picked up 4 false starts, so I think some credit needs to go to the MSU fans that made the trip down to Frisco for that, making it a difficult place to play. But when they needed to execute, they did. Cam Miller throwing that deep ball, and we talked about the 4th down stop, but they don't get the touchdown without Lance making a couple of grabs. So they just executed when they needed to, and I don't think it was entirely just a lack of discipline on the MSU defense, but just some good plays being made by the 2 best teams in the nation.
Yeah, I kind of want to follow up by saying I think maybe I agree. I don't think it was a lack of discipline. I think something showed up on film, and they said, let's see if they do the same thing again.
So you think it was more about scheme then?
I think it was more about NDSU scheming and saying let's go spread and see if that Mike linebacker goes way out to the boundary, which is what happened.
Yeah.
Which Brock Eisweiler, who by the way is really good at being
he's
color
good.
analyst. He's good. And shout out to Flathead High. And I think Makita O'Reilly was about 5 yards inside the sideline, and there's just nobody there. It's what was my line earlier this year. I think I saw an antelope, and that was the closest thing to Cam Miller on that run. And I want to point out in that clock drive at the end of the first half, he did it again for 27 yards. Nobody was spying him, and the middle was completely open. And that time he gained 27 yards for anybody brought him down. Probably the biggest play in that drive.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, I think it has a lot to do with scheme. If the quarterbacks are getting the bulk of their rushing yards up the middle, usually like on Malat's 44-yard touchdown run, that breaks to the outside. When you see quarterbacks running, it's mostly to the outside. Having that much space in the middle, it seems like people are out of place. So we can argue discipline, scheme, just clearly people were not where they're supposed to be, or North Dakota State just did a great job of exposing that. So moving on, this game was an excellent game, back and forth. There was a lot of key moments where it tipped the scales in one way or the other. I have my own opinions on what I thought was the kind of key moment or the key part of the game that changed for both teams. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on what play or what moment in the game you thought was the biggest difference in the game, Ian.
Yeah, maybe not the biggest difference in determining the winner or the loser, but just kind of how the second half shook out. I go back to that first drive of the third quarter, 3rd and 9 on MSU's own, I think it's like 38 or 39-yard line. And Malat hits Dowler for, I think it was his first catch of the game, the 26-yard pass that kind of gets them moving offensively, where it looks like, oh man, they might be punting. This game might get a little even uglier, but they get that first down and they score 8 plays later. And then obviously they end up scoring again in that third quarter to get it to a 3-point game. So I think that was a big play just to really get some momentum rolling on offense for Montana State.
Yeah, the way they opened up the third quarter was great. There's that first drive that Ian's mentioning, then the second drive they hit, is it I think it was Lonergan down the middle for
Yeah,
50
the tight end.
yards
Yeah.
down to like the 8 or so.
Mhm.
But the one play that I really look at is I think you and I might have discussed this a little bit yesterday, Josh, the like a 3rd and 4 about midway through the fourth quarter. Tommy
Yeah.
Mott rolls out and he just kind of hesitates. He's got Rohan Jones there. He could throw it for the first down. He could probably run it for the first down, but he doesn't make the decision right away. And then he soft arms a pass. It falls incomplete, and Montana State has to punt. And then North Dakota State drives down and makes it a 10-point game again. So, that one play could have been very key.
No, that was one of the points I was going to make, but I'll shift to my second point since you brought that up.
No, I was going to say that was a key point. I thought too. The two
Yep.
biggest things were the failed fourth down at the end of the first half, and then Montana State had scored on the first 3 drives of the second half, and then got a punt, and they went 3 and out. I just thought that was huge. I just felt like at that point there was really a mountain to climb. And one other thing I want to point out is Malott hit a receiver for 41 yards down to the 1-yard line. I thought he scored, and I thought somebody should have taken a look at it. That's on their first scoring drive of the third quarter. And they wasted about, 80 or 90 seconds and eventually scored. But I thought they should have, used a challenge and just to see if that guy got in. I thought he was in the end zone for a touchdown. Instead, they call him down at the 1, and it took him 2 plays to get in the end zone. I thought that was kind of crucial. Not as crucial as that 3 and out in the fourth, but they could have used that 90 seconds at the end of the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now you brought that up, but it seemed like the replay guys didn't really buzz in to chat to look at anything. It just seemed like they just kind of sat there all night, and it seemed like that would be a play that would be natural to just kind of say, okay, let's take a look and not make the coaches have to waste the challenge and stuff like that. The other thing I was going to say was you guys mentioned it too, that stretch where Montana State was down 21-3 and they fight all the way back to 28-25. They force a punt. They got all the momentum. Here's their chance. They're going to go down and score and go ahead. Tommy Malott's going to score the go ahead touchdown and be the hero and stuff like that. And like you guys mentioned, they go 3 and out and the third down pass is kind of a
he had him open, and then he just kind of hesitated. I was talking to John about this yesterday. I was like, I don't know if he didn't have a grip on the ball or what, but he took a minute to throw it, and then by the time he threw it, he got hit, and so the ball was at it was like a shoestring catch. But I was like, he was open the whole time for the first down. I don't know why it took him so long to throw it, but go ahead, Mark. I don't want to.
Yeah, it kind of looked funky that way. It was kind of maybe had a funny angle on the receiver that maybe wasn't quite. He was kind of running away from him instead of kind of curving open and stuff like that. And so he kind of threw him off. But anyway, to do that, to get the momentum back and have the chance to go down and win the game or go ahead and stuff like that, and then go 3 and out, punt the ball. And then the worst thing, then you give up a touchdown drive. So then you're down 10. And so you kind of lost all that momentum. I thought that was basically the big killer stretch of the game for Montana State.
Yeah, I agree. Like I mentioned earlier, I thought the other big moment was North Dakota State. I believe it was still 28-25 at this point. We all kind of talked about the score, but North Dakota State gets that false start. They get the 3rd and 6, and then Miller hits Lance deep. Lance makes an incredible diving catch. So you can't really knock it because it was a great play, but I was like, to be 3rd and 1 to force them to get the 3rd and 6 and then not be able to get off the field after they just had back-to-back touchdown drives, I felt like that took the wind out of the stadium. That was a big play as well. But I still feel like that 3rd and 4 was one of the biggest plays, if not the biggest play in the game. But moving on, talking more about that second half, the Bobcats offense did start get going. Malott got out of the pocket a little bit more. He was doing a lot more designed runs, and it seemed like the passing game finally started to open up. What do you think took so long for the passing game to open up? Was it just Malott getting out of the pocket, or was it just kind of more about feeling each other out, and now you know what you are capable of doing to expose the defense, John?
I personally just think that Brent Vigen wasn't going to go away from his game plan. The Cats run the ball a lot. It's worked for them all season. They just keep pounding it, and We've seen it with other running backs across college football this year, where the longer you kind of wear on a defense, the more you get some bigger holes to open up, and you get through, and you bust out the big play. It happened for them in week 0. They had, down 31-14 at one point, and they roar back. They get the 93-yard touchdown run from Adam Jones, and they end up getting the win at New Mexico. So I just think that that's how they played. The run game opens up the pass, and eventually, you get to that with Tommy Malott. The one thing I do want to give credit to North Dakota State too, and I know Fritz was writing up a lot of articles this week about how the offensive line for Montana State needed to play better in the trenches, because that's, some of the points that Montana State has seen in the past 2 matchups with North Dakota State and where they've lost it. And they really did well at winning the trenches. They opened up holes, but North Dakota State's second level tackling was just incredible in that game. Adam Jones, Scott Trey Humphrey would get through the line, and a linebacker's right there to make an open field tackle. It really shut down that running game better than any team has done so for Montana State, and that's why they came out on top.
Good point.
Yeah, John. John's right about that, and not just like form tackling, but there's a couple times where they made shoestring tackles or ankle tackles where you thought, man, if that guy hadn't made that tackle, they're gashed. And I thought, as Osweiler pointed out, they didn't run a lot of run pass option, or at least didn't do it very effectively until the second half. And like that big throw to Lonergan was such a huge play. And I think, if there's a lot of coulda, woulda, shoulda, as I've seen like 5 of these games now. Didn't see this one in person, where they all looked winnable, and they just didn't do the things you thought maybe they should have done. Hindsight being 2020. One of them for me is Adam Jones against New Mexico on that 93-yard run. It was an outside zone. They ran away from those tackles. And it seemed like Monday they ran at those 2 great tackles for NDSU over and over again, and it didn't work out for them. And then the second half, they started going, well, maybe we should go around those guys. And pretty soon it's a 3-point game again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously when you fall behind, sometimes that kind of forces you to kind of open up your offense. And like John and Fritz mentioned, Montana State doesn't usually need to do that. They just run the ball, and then they open it up off of the run. The one thing I did notice, you guys talked about the tackling of North Dakota State. I think give them credit for some pretty good team speed. You would notice in the first half, Montana State seemed like they had a play developing that was going to get 15, 20 yards. And the North Dakota State guys closed on them quickly and got them down for 4 or 5 or 6 yards. And those were big, those were big stops. They weren't that bad, noteworthy that way as far as highlight plays, but they just kept, they helped get Montana State off the field. So credit North Dakota State for maybe having a little more team speed than maybe some of the teams that Montana State has played, before this game.
Yeah, I really like what John said earlier about kind of going in and the game plan of, okay, yeah, we're Montana State. We want to run the football. I mean, they ran it 22 times in the first half. And obviously, they're down, they only have 3 points on the board, right? So then in the second half, when you're down 21-3, it's just kind of desperation. You're going to start throwing the ball a little bit more. Only ran 14 times in the second half. And a lot of those were just kind of, a lot like kind of scrambling late in the game, trying to get a couple of yards to make it more third and manageable or fourth and manageable late in the game. But they also kind of, what helped get the pass game going a little bit, in my opinion, was just the play action. I looked to the long passes to King that Fritz mentioned earlier when he got tackled at the 1, and Lonergan. I hope I pronounced that right. On the tight end up the seam where he ends up scoring on that play. Both of those were off of play action, and I think maybe those linebackers bid on them a little bit to get those guys open down the field.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I thought the play action, and I thought the other thing too was Montana State in the second half, they were doing a lot of misdirection, and it was opening up a lot of runs. And I'm just kind of confused on why, like Fritz mentioned and everyone else mentioned, that in that first half it was running at the strength of North Dakota State and not doing more of that misdirection. Yeah, you're down 21-3 in the second half, and you have to open up things more. You can't stick to what's not working. But I just don't get why you get more of your athletes on the outside sooner instead of waiting until you're down 18 points. But that's why I'm a podcaster and I'm not a head coach. So We're gonna move on to the end of the game. Couple of head-scratching decisions. First, that 4th and 2. You're down 10 points. You elect to go for it on 4th and 2. You don't get that 4th and 2. The game's over right then and there. A lot of people thought that maybe you should kick the field goal. Osweiler was saying that you got to take the points here, but it worked out. That decision, and then the decision at the end of the game to not have anyone back to return the punt and just basically let it roll to end out the game. How do we feel about these decisions, Fritz? Were you scratching your head like I was, or did you agree with Vegan's mindset?
Well, I mean, the best MSU could do on the 4th and 2 was make it a one-score game. So they rolled the dice, and it worked out for them. Great throw and great route by Taco Dollar. Mm-hmm. And then that onside kick was perfectly hit, and I don't think
it was.
I know it touched an MSU player, but I think he was 10 yards down when it touched him, in my opinion. So they could have recovered that. And then when it comes to the punt, yeah, I agree. I think they should have went for the return because Taco Dollar's pretty dangerous. He had a pretty good return early in the game. Instead, they sold out for the block. I suppose it's 6 of one, half to the other. It's low percentage either way, but I think it was a better percentage to let Dollar try to make a return. Put some pressure on, but have a return set up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the 4th and 2 when they're down 10, you kind of have to go for it. So I kind of made it a no-brainer. The one right before the half, we talked about that before, was probably a good idea for an offense like Montana State. Just I thought it was just a bad play call, and plus they put pressure on him and he threw an incomplete pass. So then they score, and it just looks like it was worse than it was. So. But yeah, I don't know what Vegan was thinking on the punt. I don't know if anybody asked him afterward why they didn't put somebody back, but he must have thought obviously the clock wasn't going to run out, and either way there was going to be maybe at least time for one more play, and that's why he had an 11-man rush instead of having somebody like Dowler back, who's pretty dynamic, who could have made a play. I think you probably could have got as much pressure with 10 and give him a chance, maybe they shank it or something like that, or he breaks one. I think, I would, like Fritz said, I'd have put, had Dowler back there to return it.
Yeah, on MSU's last offensive drive before the touchdown, before it gets to 4th down, when it's 3rd and 10, I'm kind of thinking to myself, putting myself in a coach's perspective, I would think about kicking the field goal on 3rd down. Before Malott scrambles and gets those 8 yards to get it to 4th and 2, and obviously great route by Dowler to get the touchdown on there. So it ended up working out in their favor. But I mean, if you kick the field goal on 3rd down, it's still one-score game, and you save about 10 to 15 seconds. Maybe you get the ball back on the punt. And speaking of the punt, I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I don't know why there isn't a guy back there to catch the ball, to stop the clock. The ball lands with I think about 5 seconds left remaining in the game. I'm not sure. I don't know if one person not rushing the punt makes that much of a difference. Maybe it does, but just the kind of just have that safety valve of you have someone there to stop the clock and give yourself a chance for if you don't block it.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. I mean, you guys are talking about Taco Dollar making a play, making a return or anything. Even just a fair catch gets the offense back out on the field for one more play. You could set up some sort of, hook and ladder, pitch around. Play it. I mean, it's not likely either way, but you got to give yourself both those options. I think at least than selling out into just one for having one extra player go down and try to block that kick.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say too. Like, I'm glad that you brought up the time, Ian, because I was like, even if Dollar's not able to do anything with the punt return, you get a fair catch and you get at least one more play with your star quarterback who is a freak of an athlete, and maybe something crazy happens, But yeah, needless to say, it was a fantastic game. I was super entertained. It was the first Big Sky game since like week 0 that I got to watch from start to finish. So I was super entertained. So congrats to both teams and to the Bison for winning their 10th FCS title since 2011. Crazy run that they're on. So congrats to them. And unfortunately for the Bobcats, still waiting for that second title from 1984. But that is going to wrap up this championship recap episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. Join us next week. We'll have one final season-ending episode for you guys, talking about some new coaching hires. We got one at Sac State, I know that, and a couple of people left, and as well as update you on the transfer portal. It's hard to keep track of. We'll try to do our best to sum it up for you. and give you our opinion on the best additions and kind of the worst losses of the season. I want to thank my panel who've been here all year, Chris, John, Mark, and Ian. Join us again next week for one final episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. Thank you all for joining us and being with us all year. We'll see you all next week on the Big Sky Now podcast. Take care.
At Van Law Firm in Kalispell, we're dedicated to providing expert and compassionate legal support to individuals and families in the Flathead Valley. With years of experience in criminal defense, personal injury, and estate planning, our team has a proven track record of achieving favorable outcomes for our clients. We understand that legal matters can be stressful, so we prioritize clear communication and work closely with you every step of the way. Contact us today for a free consultation and let us put our experience to work for you. Visit vanlawfirm.com or call us at 406-826-6529.